Oh, welcome into the Russ Joy Show. I'm Russ Joy, for you that because you're smart. It's also the name of the show. And it's bright and sunny outside because we're still on Vegas time, baby. I called my family a little bit ago, and it was dark out, and it freaked me out. And then I remembered this is the difference between Vegas and Philly. It's dark there. It's sunny here. It's dark in Philly, not just in the sky. It's dark in Philly because the Phillies fell behind 2-0 to the Dodgers in a series that will ultimately end with a Phillies loss. And we could certainly have a conversation tonight. We'll call it tonight. It's not really nighttime here, but we'll call it tonight. We have a conversation about the Phillies if you want. I'm not actually as concerned about breaking down the game because I think at this point, many of you are probably sick and tired of thinking about the game. But things got worse because Nick Castellanos decided to open his trap and say some of the dumbest shit. We're going to get into it in a little bit. But Nick Castellanos, of course, took over the news cycle, at least from what I can tell. And obviously, since I'm not in the market right now, I'm not in Philly, taking in all of the sports talk radio stuff of it all. I've been monitoring it relatively closely, but not as closely as normal. Absolute disaster class by the Phillies. And Nick Castellanos decided, as I said, to open his mouth, say some dumb stuff. And then not that long ago, about an hour or so ago, Bryce Harper came out and pandered a bit to the fans. Bryce Harper came out and pandered once again, almost rebutting what Nick Castellanos had to say. And then I did a little bit of a dive into the situation for next year, just in terms of which players are actually under contract and which ones aren't. And we're going to get into all of that. We also have to have a conversation about the Flyers and Connor McDavid and whether or not the Flyers rebuild plan has changed because of Connor McDavid signing a 2-year extension for well below market value and Kirill Kaprizov setting the market with a massive offer, a massive deal, a massive extension. We have to have that conversation. And there have been a couple of things put out there about players that might be on the move for the Flyers, players that might be targeted by the Flyers. But I got to kind of give you a little bit of an idea of whether or not the rebuild plan has actually changed, because hint, I believe it certainly has. Oh, by the way, hockey's back. It's kind of weird because out here in Vegas, first game was wrapping up. Second game was getting ready to start. I was standing at a sports book last night, and it was like 5 o'clock or 5:30 or whatever out here, and Monday Night Football was on. I still can't get used to that. Now I understand why people on the West Coast are happy. The games start ridiculously early. You're able to watch a primetime, quote-unquote, primetime game on the East Coast. You can watch it here and then still have plenty of time to like watch another show before you go to bed. It's very weird, but we're going to talk about it. And also the Eagles. Eagles had some kind of a meeting today between Saquon, Barkley, Jalen Hurts, and A.J. Brown. We'll get to all of it. But before we do, I'm going to pop the comments up here on the screen. We'll see how many we get. It is, what time is it there? It's like 8:36 local time. So instead of us doing a Wednesday show, I have a full day of meetings tomorrow. And I said, if I don't do a show Tuesday night and I plan on doing it Wednesday morning, it's not going to happen. And I decided I'm going to buck the trend of me being out of town and not getting 3 episodes out. I'm doing 3 episodes this week. I said I was going to do it. Video Guy Amedeo doubted me. Intern Andrew probably doubted me. Some of you may have even doubted me, but don't doubt. We're already up to 2 shows this week. Damn it, we're going to do it, and we're going to do it live. But I do want to get out to all the people. Linda Joseph, winner of the Drive to 500 jersey I saw, did not send a tweet after the Eagles lost. It was an undefeated Saquon Barkley jersey. No longer the case, says the Russ Joy Show after dark from Vegas. I still have you can see the mountains here kind of in the background. Behind, let's see if I do this. Am I going to overpower things? Yeah, check that out. Some buildings. Chris Freed asking if I've taken the driverless car ride or whatever. I have not. I'm actually afraid to. I don't think I'd want to do it even if I could. Amedeo says, hey, Powder Blues in LA, if they're going to lose in style. I mean, they theoretically have them for game 3 and game 4 if there is a game 4. I don't know what makes anybody think that there's going to be game 4. Aaron Nola on the mound. Ranger Suarez backing him up because that makes sense. If I yell in a hotel room, how bad could it get? Is somebody going to report me to the hotel management if I start yelling? Because I would like to yell. I watched Broads a little bit this morning, and I heard Broads yelling, and Broads yells about a lot of things, but this is one of the times where I was like, yes, it is totally within the realm of possibility and within a realm of understanding of why Broads was so angry. I got to tell you, I've reached the point now with this Phillies core that I'm not letting them get to me the way that maybe they should. I'm not going to let the Phillies get to a point where they're going to break me as a human being. I am so over the Phillies core. I am so over this group. I am so over running it back every year. I've been pretty consistent in my disdain for Dave Dombrowski and his lack of urgency to get anything done with prioritizing the vibes. I've been over this shit. Now, I did tell you guys, I thought that the Phillies were in a much better shape going into this postseason than last, and they'd been playing better baseball than they were down the stretch last year. But man, this to me is almost just an indictment on Dave Dombrowski's lack of movement in the past offseason. The Duran trade was great. The Bader trade, certainly well above expectation. There's no way Dombrowski could say, oh, yeah, we knew Harrison Bader was going to be a stud. Those acquisitions have been great. But what's burned the Phillies so far this postseason? I guess we could start there. Game 1, Dave Robertson comes back out for the 7th. It doesn't work out. Strahm gives up a home run to Hernandez. And you go, all right, if the Phillies had been able to go out and get another reliever that wasn't off of the bargain heap, right? Not out of the bargain barrel like Dave Robertson, maybe you feel a little bit better about the Phillies' ability to hold a lead late in game 1. I said to you guys on Monday, Rob Thompson came out once again and said, hey, everybody's available for game 2. That means Ranger Suarez could be available for game 2. And then people said, all right, well, if Ranger Suarez is going to be available for game 2 out of the pen, what does that mean for game 3? And it would mean that probably either Nola or Walker Buehler were going to have to take the mound. So you get into game 2. You're in a high leverage situation. Feels like the game is getting away from you. Jesus Luzardo has a great start. And once again, does Rob Thompson stick with his starter a little bit too long? I didn't blame him for leaving Luzardo in because even though it felt like things were getting away from him a little bit, he'd been largely dominant on the day. I'm not going to hold Rob Thompson to that decision to leave Luzardo in, just like I wasn't anti-keeping Christopher Sanchez in game 1. But what was I against? Rob Thompson says Ranger Suarez is going to be available out of the pen. High leverage situation. Ranger Suarez is going to be available out of the pen. Jesus Luzardo starts having a little bit of an issue. 2 guys are warming up in the pen. Kerkering, Strahm. And in that moment, I assume almost everybody else said, oh, same shit, different day. Cool. Awesome. That sounds great. So we're sold a bill of goods. Ranger Suarez is going to be available out of the pen. Kerkering, Strahm. The wheels start to fall off with Luzardo. They don't go to cold-blooded killer Ranger Suarez. They go to Kerkering. Kerkering, who is not exactly lights out in high leverage situations. It blows up. They bring in Strahm. It blows up. What did you think was going to happen? If you're Rob Thompson, what exactly did you think was going to happen? Did you think with guys on base, Kerkering was going to come out, was going to go on the mound, was going to be able to work his way out of that? No. Then you bring in Strahm. You thought that was going to work. No. It was much more of the same. And so even though I was like, oh, the Phillies aren't going to hurt me again, I'm not going to get myself emotionally invested. I was annoyed. At the very least, I was annoyed because that is a game that once again, your bats went totally cold. And we could say, hey, great starting pitching on the other side. And Luzardo himself, great starting pitching. Get to the bullpen. What have we always heard? Dodgers bullpen sucks. Phillies bullpen largely sucks. Get to 7th, 8th, and 9th. The bat should turn on. You got 3 runs. We haven't even gotten to the lineup yet. We haven't even gotten to Bryce Harper yet. We haven't even gotten to Nick Castellanos on the base paths yet. I'm just looking at that decision to have Kerkering and Strahm be the guys that come in. I had no faith that they were going to be able to get out of a jam, and they didn't. And then I got angry. I did. For a little bit, I got angry because Suarez should have been brought in that moment. It's like I said on Monday. If you're in a position where the game is effectively on the line, if you're in a situation where it is essentially life or death in terms of falling behind 0-2 or having a modicum of a chance of going a game apiece, Suarez has to be the guy to go in that situation. So did Rob Thompson lie? I don't know. But I didn't see Ranger Suarez come in game 2. But we did have to suffer through Kerkering and Strom, and it didn't work. So I was angry. I was at least angry for a little bit. And then it got worse because the Phillies started to kind of mount a comeback. And after the game kind of felt out of reach, they started mounting a little bit of a comeback. But what did we see? Kyle Schwarber's struggles continue. Trey Turner, largely on the night, swinging at anything. Anything and everything that was even within 10 inches of the plate, he swung at. But then you're in a situation late in the game. Castellanos gets a nice hit. And then Jimmy Rollins, post-game, kind of breaks down. Mookie Betts holding Castellanos. Castellanos not being in a position to be able to read Betts, to be able to make an actual read on the bunt attempt to get himself to third base. And Castellanos gets himself tagged out. And then it kind of feels like any momentum that you hope to have died. And I wanted to believe in the ninth inning there was a chance that the Phillies could mount a comeback. I've seen plenty of examples of why they wouldn't be able to finish it, but for just a little sliver of time, I felt like, all right, there might be a chance. Maybe there will be a clutch hit that gets it done. Nope. In fact, one of the only people who seemed to be able to deliver was Harrison Bader, who came into the game, couldn't really run, wasn't supposed to really try to run. Bader came in and delivered. The big money guys on this team did not deliver on the night. I know it's going to be a surprise. I know it's a massive shock that Harper, Schwarber, Turner didn't really contribute in a super meaningful way in the game 2 loss. They look like they gave up. And yeah, there were some moments in the ninth that you started to feel like, all right, maybe things are starting to pivot a little bit. Maybe they're going to change a little bit. Maybe the Phillies are going to find some swagger. They don't have swagger. The swagger is gone. And I guess we should just have a conversation about what Nick Castellanos had to say. Because Castellanos, some are saying,
well, Nick Castellanos didn't mean to call out Phillies fans. He wasn't saying Phillies fans are the problem. He wasn't saying that the Phillies fans are the reasons that the players are having a real hard time. You know, it's not him saying that the Phillies fans are an issue. He's talking about Citizens Bank Park.
I don't know how we're supposed to make heads or tails of it, but let's go out to the Castellanos quote, because this is what really ruled the day in Philly sports. And again, it's almost like the A.J. Brown quote after the game, after the loss against the Broncos. But this was Nick Castellanos. When everything's going good and you're rolling, it's a bitch to play here when you're an opposing team because the environment is amazing. But if we run into adversity and the tide shifts, and now we're playing more tight because we don't want to be reprimanded for something bad. So I want to re-rack that again. When everything's going good and you're rolling, it's a bitch to play here when you're an opposing team because the environment's amazing. Agreed. And I think even going into the series, I think I said, I would love for Phillies fans to figure out a way to make it a nightmare, a house of horrors for the Dodgers to play in, get on Ohtani early in game 1, try to get him rattled. Phillies put up 3 runs and then the bats go cold. Game 2, can't get anything going. You get to the bullpen, they kind of get some stuff going a little bit later on in the game. A lot of unsung heroes are kind of the ones who make most of it happen. But it's the second part. If we run into adversity and tide shifts, meaning they start losing, now we're playing more tight because we don't want to be reprimanded for something bad. Which to me means Nick Castellanos doesn't like accountability, right? I'm not one to be hyperbolic here about taking a player's quote and blowing it out of proportion. But you're playing tight because you don't want to be reprimanded. You don't want to be held accountable if you underachieve. You don't want to be held accountable if you underperform. You don't want to be held accountable. You don't want to be booed if you stink up the joint. That's what that reads as. And the people who said,
well, he's not talking about the Phillies fans. He's not complaining about the Phillies fans.
Then what, pray tell, is he talking about? It's a bitch to play at Citizens Bank Park when things are rolling. But if the tide changes, if the tide shifts, we're playing tight because we don't want to be reprimanded. Who, pray tell, is Nick Castellanos talking about? The ghosts? Is he talking about the vendors? The hot dog people? The concession folks? Is he talking about the crab fries? Is he talking about a slice of pizza? A hot dog that's half eaten and thrown in the garbage? An empty cup of beer? An empty souvenir helmet full of melted ice cream? Who, pray tell, is Nick Castellanos talking about? Of course he's talking about the fans. Of course he's talking about the people that are mercilessly booing a team that is largely unchanged from 2024 and previously 2023. Of course he's talking about the fans. Who else is there to talk about? And it's rich coming from him, because need I remind people? Of course I don't. You're all smart people. But I'll remind you anyway. Nick Castellanos was brought in here to be a difference-making bat from the right side of the plate. A guy that you could theoretically split up a Harper and a Schwarber. A guy that you were supposed to theoretically be able to bring in here and provide, at the very least, protection for Bryce Harper. Has he been that? Is Nick Castellanos an everyday player? Is Nick Castellanos a guy who's going out and performing at a high level each and every game? Was he that in 2025, the entirety of the season? The answer to all that is no, he's not, and he wasn't. Castellanos has effectively been reduced to being a platoon player because Max Kepler comes in. Kepler was kind of a disaster. Halfway through the season, around the trade deadline, Kepler started playing better. Great. Marsh had a really rough start of the season, has been largely good for 3.5 months. Good on him. Harrison Bader comes in with no expectations, outperforms everything, and has effectively relegated Castellanos to being a platoon guy. So Castellanos, who is brought in with high expectations, has largely underperformed those expectations, is now bemoaning the fact that Philly fans are going to hold him and his teammates accountable. Give me a fucking break. Seriously. This fan base has gone to bat for Nick Castellanos. There have been people who've been critical. There have been people who have called out some of his boneheaded comments in the past. But I would argue that the fans have largely been more forgiving of Nick Castellanos than the media has been. And yet this guy's going to say, well, when the tide shifts, we're getting tight. We're playing tight because we're afraid of being reprimanded. Get the fuck out. You're a pro athlete. You chose to sign here. Nick Castellanos wasn't traded against his will to Philadelphia. He chose to sign here. He knew exactly what he was getting into. And if he didn't, he's a moron. If Nick Castellanos didn't know that somebody who signs in Philadelphia is going to be booed if they don't perform, he's an idiot. Or his representation is stupid. Somebody's a moron. You know exactly what to expect. This isn't Milwaukee. This isn't the Los Angeles Angels. This isn't the Kansas City Royals. What the hell did you think you were getting into? Seriously. Of course you're going to be held accountable. It's an absolute disgrace. And again, I don't tend to be super hyperbolic. I try to look at the players on a human level, take a more holistic approach to analyzing a player, which is why I'm not here burning Bryce Harper to the ground because his wife just gave birth. I know what it's like, right? In the immediate aftermath of a child coming into the world. Now, I have to assume that Bryce Harper probably isn't waking up 4 or 5 times at night to a baby crying on a monitor. I would probably imagine Bryce Harper maybe has a little bit more help in his household, his very large household, than my wife and I did. But I would imagine that it's still a struggle. His wife, after having a baby, probably struggling because that's normal. So even though I'm very unhappy with Bryce Harper's performance this postseason, I'm not going to rail against the guy because on a human level, there is an extenuating circumstance. A child being brought into this world, and that is a lot of stress, and that is a lot that falls on parents. And then you have more kids at home to bring that. There's a lot going on there. Am I happy with Bryce Harper's performance this postseason? No, not at all. Do I still think he has to figure out a way to overcome and persevere? Indeed, I do. But I'm willing to give him just a little bit of grace. But Castellanos, give me a fucking break. Give me a break. Castellanos has largely underperformed since he's been here. Fans have tried to bend over backwards in a lot of cases to give this guy extra. I don't even know what. I said grace a little bit ago. I don't know. Fans have been, I think, mostly willing to try to give Castellanos the benefit of the doubt. You have the stuff where, like, was it last year? Is like the beautiful moments between a father and son, and people are like, "Oh, this is a cool thing, great." Not gonna rail against the father-son moments. They're great, but this guy hasn't gotten it done, and it doesn't seem like he wants to be here. And it certainly seems like he's probably disaffected with the fact that he was supposed to be an everyday contributor, and he's a role player at this point. But then it gets worse because, like, if you think about it, like, he still has another year left. I tweeted earlier today, like an idiot, because, you know, sometimes I'm dumb. I thought for some reason Castellanos was up at the end of the year. I knew Schwarber was, knew the Real Muto situation. And I really thought, like an idiot, that Castellanos' contract is up. And it's not. He has another year left at $20 million. And I tweeted earlier today. I tweeted two things earlier today. One, I said he's going to get mercilessly booed next year whenever he returns to Citizens Bank Park. There's a special place in Philly fan hell for a guy who underperforms and then blames the fans. I tweeted that thinking, oh, Castellanos' contract's up. It's not. I don't see a scenario here. Unless the Phillies roar back from an 0-2 hole, get themselves into the CS, get themselves to the World Series, I don't see a scenario where Nick Castellanos can be back next year. Now, you could make the argument, well, why would a team want to pick up Nick Castellanos? Because he's still a somewhat productive right-handed bat. But this thing has gone so far sideways at this point. This thing is soured to such an extent. I don't know how you could possibly bring him back next year. What exactly are you hoping to get out of Nick Castellanos if he returns next year? I think he'll be gone. I think he will get mercilessly booed, and he brought a lot of this shit on himself. I don't feel bad for him. He can go whine and cry wherever he wants. But it is absolutely ridiculous to look at the situation and say, well, we're playing tight because this place goes from being a bitch to play in to a place where we're going to be, we're afraid of being reprimanded. Grow the fuck up. You're a pro athlete. Figure it out. The role players on this team figure it out. The guys who are unheralded, the Marshes of the world, the Baders who came in with no expectations, the Stotts who have previously been bigger contributors and are still just trying to figure it out right now. They're not out publicly bemoaning the fan base. And then that gets me to a thing that Bryce Harper said today where, like, I don't hate the comment, but Bryce Harper, this was transcribed by John Clark, and I think there's a video going around, but I'm not going to play the video because it'll make me even angrier. But Harper today was asked about Castellanos' comments. And we know that Harper likes to pander. It's kind of his thing. But this was Bryce Harper's response. He said, quote, I love the bank. I love the fans. I boo myself if I get out. If we deserve to be booed, they spend their extra hard-earned dollars to support us. They expect greatness out of us. We've got some of the best fans in baseball. They make me better. I enjoy it. I puked. I honestly was like ready to puke in my mouth. I know this is exactly.
This is what we want here in Philadelphia. This is what we want. This is taking accountability.
It's pandering. It's pandering. I boo myself. Get the fuck. Stop. Stop. Please. Just stop. Again, I will extend a little bit of grace, a little bit of human dignity, because he and his wife just brought another child into this world. And the postpartum time is just very stressful. And so I'm going to just try to give it to the guy. But I don't need that. This is too far on the spectrum. If Castellanos being a bitch is on this side of the spectrum, Harper saying, I boo myself, that's on this side of the spectrum. I don't need that either. I need something in between. And now he did kind of say something in an extended clip that was kind of like, you know, if there are guys who kind of feel differently, I don't agree. Okay, fine. He doesn't boo himself. Stop. We have some of the best fans. Great. They spend their hard-earned dollars. You don't have to say that. We all know. We've all looked at ticket prices to come out and cheer for this dog shit team. We've all tried to figure out, do I really want to spend $250, $300, $400 a ticket to come out and support a team that is largely unchanged for back-to-back-to-back seasons, that has come up small in the postseason, back-to-back years? Do we really want to spend that money? And a lot of people did. And they went out and they supported. And they got on Shohei Ohtani early. They seemed to have him somewhat rattled on the mound in game one. They tried to will this Phillies lineup into it in game one. In game two, despite the fact that they watched the Phillies bats go cold and the bullpen vomit all over itself, they went out in game two. They tried to set the stage. They tried to set the atmosphere. And what happened? Phillies bats went totally cold to start the game.
Oh, it's hard to hit elite pitching.
I had somebody say that to me on Twitter today.
Oh, I don't know if you know this or not, but it's kind of hard to hit elite pitching.
Bullshit. Absolute bullshit. I'm sorry. Are we supporting a single A team or a pro team? Is this an up-and-coming underdog story or one of the highest payrolls in baseball? Is this a team with no championship pedigree or one that has an owner that says, I want my fucking trophy back? Which one is it? Because I'm pretty sure it's the latter. I'm pretty sure that the Phillies are supposed to be a team competing for a World Series with an owner who has been willing to spend, with a guy who leads baseball ops, the president of baseball ops, who is a surefire Hall of Famer, who has largely left the roster unchanged. That guy is still running the show, maybe running it into the ground. It's hard to hit elite pitching. Get out. Stop. Big players show up in big moments and get the job done. This Phillies roster isn't doing it. Phillies didn't score a run in this game until the 8th inning. Cool. They scratched out 2 in the 9th. Cool. It looked like if Castellanos wasn't a bonehead, they could have maybe had a better chance of getting back in the game and even winning it. Cool. You don't score until the 8th inning.
It's hard to score against elite pitching.
Get out. Get out. Just stop. Blake Snell had moments in this game, by the way, that he looked touchable. There were moments in this game that Blake Snell looked like he could have been gotten. They didn't get him. It's hard to beat elite pitching. It's hard to get hits off elite pitching. Championship contenders, championship teams, they figure out a way to manufacture runs. This Phillies team has a bunch of guys who go up and try to play hero each and every at-bat, and it ain't working. It's an absolute disgusting mess to watch. Here's Landros. Let's talk about a bunt with none out in the 9th. The bunt didn't work. And again, Castellanos on base. Good on you getting on base. Gets himself thrown out at third. Kills momentum. Not great. Not great at all. Greg Bondarenko's here. Says Seattle and Toronto winning. I expect both of them to advance. Toronto's having a lot of fun. Toronto figures out a way to hit pitching. Toronto figures out a way to use home field advantage to their benefit. Phillies don't. I actually had a question about the bunt, too. Like, what was the thought process there? Thought process was advance the runner, then hopefully, a sac fly. You're going to tie the game. That was the hope. Was that really the hope? Just advance the runner? Are we playing to win? Or are you playing to extend it to extra innings against a bad bullpen? What are you trying to do? What's the goal? What's the end game if you're the Phillies? Seems to be my big problem. No accountability with the team. It feels like no one is on the same page. It feels like somebody along the way decided that normal expectations, championship expectations, are unreasonable for Philly fans to have. I don't know where we got so far away. I don't know where we went from, it's all for Red October. We live for these moments. I don't know where that died. I don't know when the Phillies clicked the opt-out button. I don't know when the Phillies had the opportunity to hit unsubscribe from this mail list. When did that happen? When did this Phillies team that came into the postseason with all of these high expectations, when did that team just decide, yeah, you know what, we're not part of that anymore. We're no longer aligned with that idea. Oh yeah, you expect us to play for a win? No. Man on second, no outs in the 9th inning. We're gonna bunt. We're actually not playing to win. We're playing to Try to force a tie, and then maybe somebody will have big enough balls to go up to the plate and maybe deliver a game-winning hit. Who knows? Who's to say? I don't know what this team's doing. And I don't think that it's going to get any better in LA. They have the Powder Blues coming out. They better hope that Alec Boehm somehow monstars his way into becoming Mike Schmidt. You have how tall is Boehm? Is he 6'4"? Is he 6'5"? You have a guy who's unbelievably tall, a guy who was in the home run derby a year ago, a guy who, like, in theory should be able to crush the ball. This dude hits singles like he's Nomar Garciaparra. I don't know what we're doing. I don't know what the Phillies are doing. I don't know who on the Phillies right now you can believe in. Is there hope you can believe in? Can we get Barack Obama in here? That's hope you can believe in. Who's the hope? Who's the great hope for the Phillies in Game 3? Is it Aaron Nola? Because Aaron Nola is going to be on the mound. We all knew that with the series on the line, the number one guy everybody wants to go to is Aaron fucking Nola, right? Wrong. Do you believe in Aaron Nola? And by the way, Topper says Ranger Suarez is going to back up Nola. So if things don't go well, Suarez is going to be there. Rob Thompson said said going into Game 1 and going into Game 2, Ranger Suarez is available. He didn't pitch in either game. Topper puked all over himself, put in Kirk Ringenstrom in Game 2. And now we're supposed to believe Suarez is going to be there in Game 3. Okay. So we got Nola. It'd be great. On a human level, it would be awesome. If Nola can go out to LA, give 6 strong innings, Phillies bats somehow wake up, Bryce Harper gets a good night's sleep instead of having to deal with a newborn at home, Phillies bats come alive. Game 3, they somehow win. Game 4, I guess they're going to go back to Christopher Sanchez. He goes out, spins up a gem. They come back. Citizens Bank Park. Game 5. Place is a bitch to play at. Well, we know what's going to happen. If the tide shifts, Phillies bats are going to go cold because they're going to be trying so hard because they don't want to be reprimanded. That's what Nick Castellanos told us. I am so sick and tired of this. I am not rooting for the Phillies to lose. I want the Phillies to win. I would love for the Phillies to come back from an 0-2 hole and go to the CS, riding a wave of momentum and go to a World Series, win a World Series, and then we can come back to these episodes and say, oh, that was so dumb. Russ is a moron. It'd be great. It'd be great. It'd be great to come back to this episode and go, wow, I really overreacted. I should have believed in the Phillies. I don't believe in them. You shouldn't either. Chris is probably right. Nola gives up 4 in the first. It's entirely possible. Right? I mean, what are we doing? Ford's F-bombing on a Tuesday night. Says Nola's a stiff. JH with a good question. Is Topper trying to get himself fired? No. He's not. And that's the sad part. If Rob Thompson actively made these decisions with the intent of getting fired, that would be one thing. He doesn't want to get fired, and yet he might get himself fired. Because Dombrowski's not going to fire himself. I just don't understand how we are looking at this lineup again and saying it is mostly unchanged. Turner's there. Schwarber's there. Harper's there. Realmuto's there. Boehm is there. Stott is there. Marsh is there. The only real change is you have Harrison Bader. Bader's it. Bader's your change. And occasionally Kepler's in there. Castellanos is out because he stinks.
Oh, Nick Castellanos, he delivered a clutch hit.
He did.
Delivered a clutch hit. He's the only guy who can perform in clutch situations.
Okay, cool. Yeah. It's a shame that he, sucks in the outfield. It's a shame that the only good plays that he can make from the outfield are the occasional laser beam that he throws to the plate, which we love. It's a shame that he's not a consistent enough hitter that Thompson has no choice but to play him. It's a shame. That is actually what the subtext of the 2025 Phillies should be. A shame. It's a shame. I actually do want to say this, okay? This is not being hyperbolic. When the Phillies lost in the World Series, we all had the same thought. They have a window. They cannot become what happened of that 08 to 2011, 2012 team, where you look back and you say, there should have been more than one World Series win. We all love the 08 team, but I think we can all agree. We thought that 09 team with Cliff Lee at the top of the rotation probably should have been able to win another World Series. That could have been a back-to-back team. They should have been able to beat that Yankees team. 2011, Halliday's at the top of the rotation. You say, this team should be able to get back to a World Series. This team is better than that 08 team. You got to 2011. You have the four aces. You say to yourself, this team should absolutely be able to get back to a World Series and to win it. It's significantly better than the 08 team. This Phillies team lost in the World Series. And if this flames out the way that it looks like it's going to against the Dodgers, we are going to look back at this team and this era of Phillies baseball, and we are going to definitively say this was the biggest disappointment for a generation of baseball fans in Philadelphia. By far. We could have the conversation about have the Sixers in Joel Embiid's tenure been a bigger disappointment? To some extent, maybe. Maybe. The only team that I think you can say in Embiid's career was a real disappointment, right, was the team that had the bouncing Kawhi Leonard shot. That team probably could have and maybe even should have gone on to win an NBA title. They had the talent. They had the ability. The Jimmy Butler, Ben Simmons, Tobias Harris, JJ Redick, and Joel Embiid team. That team maybe coulda, woulda, shoulda won an NBA title. Could you make the point that last year's team was a disappointment because Embiid was hurt and Paul George was hurt and Maxey ended up hurt, McCain ended up hurt? Sure. A lot of injuries. But they haven't gone into a season with the kind of expectations that this Phillies team has year after year after year and then come up this small. The Flyers, Lord knows. The Flyers haven't had expectations. The Eagles. Can you say that the 2023 team was a disappointment? You're coming off of a Super Bowl loss and the wheels fall off. That was a disappointing year. Would we have said that after the Super Bowl win led by Nick Foles that the next season was a disappointment? Maybe. But this Phillies team has had enough talent and enough expectations for them to come up as small as they have and to not have a championship to show for it, I think makes them the most disappointing squad. And I don't think it's even particularly close. Joe Fisher says over on YouTube, what would stink is the Phillies put 7 on the Dodgers and can't close out the game. I don't even know. I don't even know what would make a disappointing thing. Like if the Phillies score runs in game 3 and then get shut out in game 4, that would be like a painfully beautiful microcosm of what it's been to be a Phillies fan through this era. All right, I think I'm done with the Phillies. I think I have to be. I'm annoyed. I am frustrated. I can't believe I let myself get hurt again. I've jokingly said to people here in Vegas, I'm ready to be hurt again. I'm not. I'm not ready to be hurt again. This sucks. Watching the Phillies go out and underperform again sucks. I'm looking right now at my Twitter mentions. People still responding to Castellanos quotes. There's a lady, Mom's Voice, says, he never said it was the fans' fault. Again, who's he referring to if Citizens Bank Park is a bitch to play at? And then when the tide turns, when the tide shifts, the guys get tight because they don't want to be reprimanded for not performing. Who else are we talking about? Somebody figure it out. Somebody please let me know. All right, let's get off of the Phillies. I can't handle it. Can't handle it. JH, by the way, is here watching hockey in the background. Says, Russ is not muted, but the game is. I appreciate that. Bless your heart. Bless your heart. Watching Pens Rangers on the computer, Russ on the phone. Thank you, JH. Thank you for being here. Okay. We're going to move on. I did everyone a disservice on Monday's show. And somebody pointed it out on Twitter today, and I have to agree with them. They said, Russ, you let us all down. You had McDavid as the lead story on the thumbnail, or he was center in the thumbnail. He was the lead story in the name of the episode, and then you very briefly touched on McDavid, and then you pieced out. And that's not right. And I thought about it, and I've decided that person was right. I forget who it was, but they were right. So let's talk a little bit of puck. Let's talk a little bit of hockey, and then we'll probably peace out on the day. I don't know if we're going to talk about the say. You know what? Hold on. Let's get this out of the way real quick, because we're going to get to hockey, and then hockey's going to take a bit of time. Hurts talked today about a meeting that he had with Saquon Barkley, with AJ Brown, and it's a very quick thing. It's a very quick video. The report came out that those three guys sat down together. They had a conversation. They talked about, I guess, what's going on with the offense. They wanted to make sure that they were all on the same page. And simply put, Jalen Hurts put it out there that, yes, they had a conversation. Yes, they talked. AJ Brown, Jalen Hurts, Saquon Barkley, they all had a conversation. They talked about the offense. They talked about what's happening so far this season. And if you thought that Jalen Hurts was going to burn AJ Brown at the stake, you clearly haven't been paying attention. Let's go over really quick to the franchise quarterback, number one, Jalen Hurts. All right, what'd you talk about with Saquon and AJ Brown?
Yeah, just us talking about the collective, talking about taking ownership for what we can, and talking about how we move forward as a team so we continue to find ways to win games.
Why the need for a meeting, do you think?
It's really just teammates being teammates.
Just teammates being teammates. Is that him saying teammates are complaining, so we need to address it because that's part of being a cohesive roster? Is it just teammates tend to talk? Could be a combination of both. Maybe there are frustrations in the locker room. Sounded like Jalen Hurts and Saquon Barkley were on the same page after the loss to the Broncos, where it's like, look, we were winning. We were doing things the right way. We were getting the results. AJ Brown maybe a little bit more frustrated. Diana Rossini put out that idea that Devontae Smith was also frustrated. Okay, fine. You got what you wanted. You got more targets. We had a more pass-heavy attack. It didn't work. The stats were there, but the loss also came with it. Let's keep going.
What was your takeaway in conclusion of the meeting?
Say it again.
What was your takeaway in conclusion of the meeting?
I don't want to make this about that, right? We got a short week. We got a division opponent coming in here. I enjoyed every second of it, and I'm enjoying every second of every opportunity we have to improve. And so that's what I've always made it about. That's what I continue to make it about. It's truly about the collective and what we do and the opportunities we have in front of us. And so everybody in this building just wants to take advantage of that.
I know that I kind of gave Bryce Harper's pandering a little bit of a hard time on this show not that long ago, earlier in this episode. Hurts is giving you everything that you're supposed to get from the leader of the team. He's giving you everything that you're supposed to get. He doesn't cause problems. He doesn't cause friction. He doesn't call out his teammates publicly. He has every right at this point to go out and say, well, receivers wanted us to pass the ball more. We did. We lost. He's not saying that. Fine. I think Hurts did exactly what you would expect him to do. I think he said exactly what you expect. I do see stuff like this. Connor Allen saying Saquon is sick of this shit. He could be. It's possible. Also says Lurie has to be so annoyed at this point. Maybe. JH says he's a leader with a capital L. Correct. And then Ford. Jalen is great. Super Bowl winner. We should feel good about Jalen Hurts. Again, regardless of how you feel about the style, regardless of how you feel about the ability for this team to win pretty games or not, Jalen Hurts wins. And he doesn't cause friction. He doesn't give you bad quotes in the press that cause even further issues. I want to imagine that the Eagles are going to decimate the Giants on Thursday night, and we can all feel a little bit better after it. We'll see if it happens. All right, now, it is time to get to hockey. As they say in hockey, let's do that hockey. So I brought up the other day that the Connor McDavid contract is one of the dumbest things I've seen. And I've listened to a few national media people, kind of give their, I guess, version of what they think the rationale was for Connor McDavid, why he extended the way that he did. Connor McDavid signed a 2-year contract with the Oilers worth $12.5 million per year. And on one level, you say, wow, a player decided to be loyal to the team that drafted them. Wow, Connor McDavid could have held the Oilers over a barrel and said, pay me what you owe me, and set the market for the team and maybe force the team to have to get rid of money to compensate him appropriately. And where Kirill Kaprizov went out and got paid $17 million a year as one of what would have been one of the biggest free agents in the 2026 free agent class. Connor McDavid should have made over $20 million. And if he was going to do a short-term deal, he should have made over $20 million. There are people who think that McDavid was trying to give Edmonton the best chance to build the best roster possible around him, give the Oilers 2 more opportunities to build that team, to build a championship quality team, and that maybe McDavid has looked around at the number 1 overall pick over the last 15, 20 years and seen how many of them have gone on to win a Stanley Cup and said, I'm going to give this organization 2 more opportunities to do it, to go out and get a better goalie than Skinner, and maybe give this fan base that supported him a championship. And all that's fine. And he doesn't necessarily owe anything to the Players Association, to the rest of the players in the NHL, to go out and set the market and get the biggest deal. Kaprizov got $17 million. McDavid plays the premium position as center. He should be paid $20+ million, maybe $25 million. I know that he doesn't owe it to every player in the league, but this was a bad move for the players. It was a bad move for the Players Association. Somebody in that leadership is probably still cursing Connor McDavid's name, because taking below market value, which is exactly what $12.5 million is, taking that contract is bad for the players. Kaprizov got $17 million. That seemed to set the new bar. And you're seeing players that maybe in the past would have gotten $6 or $7 million now getting $9, $10 million because the cap is going up. Everything was trending in the right direction for the players. And Kaprizov getting $17 million is a lot of money. And I would argue that even with the cap going up, he's probably not worth $17 million a year. He set the market. McDavid going and getting $12.5 million for 2 years set the market back. Now, it's going to make for some wild negotiating, because there are going to be agents who are going to look at teams and probably were licking their chops after the $17 million Kaprizov got and say, oh, my guy who's only worth maybe $7 million, we're going to get him 10, 11. Now that McDavid came in for 12.5, agents are almost going to have to bash the best player in the league for being an adult, taking $12.5 million, or being a sentimental sap and giving his team, quote unquote, the best opportunity to build that championship caliber roster around him. It's not good for the players. It actively has made negotiating for the players and their agents a much more complicated thing than it probably should be. And if you're a GM or a president of hockey ops or an owner, you are absolutely in love with Connor McDavid. Here's the problem. And we're going to zoom out of the Players Association perspective. And I just want to talk about the Philadelphia Flyers, because I think it's important. Did the Flyers ever explicitly say publicly, we are going to go for the biggest players in 2026 free agency? Connor McDavid, Kirill Kaprizov, come on down. We will back up the Brinks truck. Bring your asses to the city of brotherly love. No. Have the Flyers heavily implied over the course of this rebuild that 2026 is a time they are going to look to flip the switch and get bigger money players? Yes, they have. They didn't explicitly say 2026 free agency, we're going to go out and get the biggest fish possible. No. They have noted on multiple occasions, on Snow the Goalie, on Press Row Show, on other shows entirely, oh, we have a lot of money coming off the books in 2026. The implication has long been free agency in 2026 is where the Flyers were going to get frisky. Free agency in 2026 is when the Flyers were going to go out and try to get that mercenary, that big money guy to come in and take their team to the next level. And they knew that whoever they were going to get wasn't going to make them an instant cup contender unless they somehow convinced themselves that Connor McDavid was really in play, which I don't think he was. But they might have made this point in their minds that they were going to be able to supplement this roster and fill out this roster with more elite young talent on the come up, and maybe fortify the roster with good veteran players that they'd be able to at least get a meeting with a Kaprizov, at least get a meeting with a McDavid. Now, again, did they sell themselves on the idea that Briere and Jones and Tocchet were going to be able to sit in a room with Connor McDavid and convince him to spurn the team that drafted him to move across the continent and go from Canada to the U.S. to be a member of the Philadelphia Flyers? Did they convince themselves that it could happen? I don't know. I tend to think no. Did they want to have that opportunity to make the pitch in the summer of 2026? Of course they did. Every other team in the National Hockey League wanted the opportunity to make that pitch to Connor McDavid. They have to wait at least 2 years now. Fine. Kaprizov is actually a guy that I think they really had significant interest in. And you could make the case, that's another winger. Why would they want to go after another winger? They already have a lot of wingers because their wingers aren't that good. This is the thing that's driving me nuts when talking to Flyers fans about the rebuild and talking to Flyers fans about what exactly is a realistic expectation for this season and next season and maybe the season after that. Oh, well, you can't look at a Kaprizov because what about Owen Tippett? What about Tyson Forster? What about Matvei Mishkov? What about Travis Konechny? What about Bobby Brink? What do we do with those guys? Well, Mishkov is a no-brainer. Konechny, they are committed to. Arguably their best or second best winger, right? Tippett, I've said many times, I don't see it. I don't see him becoming a 40-goal guy. I'm not even sure he becomes a 35-goal guy for a really good team. Could he eventually turn himself into a 30-ish goal guy on a bad team where you just say, somebody's got to score the points, somebody's got to score the goals? Maybe. I don't see it here. I don't see a fit here. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe Rick Tocchet is going to be the Owen Tippett whisperer and turn Tippett into one of the best goal scorers in the National Hockey League. Maybe. Or maybe the Flyers should take a look at that $6.2 million cap hit and say, hey, with the cap going up, if he's a 25 to 30 goal scorer, and we have an idea that that's now going to cost $8, $9, $10 million over the next couple of years, well, then maybe the Flyers should say, hey, we trade Tippett, we've got to get value back, but he's a cost-controlled asset for an extended period of time. It makes you think, all right, what do the Flyers need? They need defensive help more than anything. It makes you think, like, could a guy like Bo Byram, who they've long been enamored with, could they look to make a move for a Bo Byram? And Anthony DeMarco put out a thing, I think today, I think that's where I saw it going around, that the Flyers maybe could try to float out the idea of an Owen Tippett for Bo Byram swap. Now, why exactly would the Sabres want to make that move? I have no idea. I'm not exactly sure that they would want to. But it is interesting. I think that Tippett ultimately should be dealt for a defenseman. I think the Flyers would be significantly better off making things work on the wing this season, but bring back a guy who could legitimately help the blue line. You know, JH brings this up. I'm not going to use Biz as like the source of truth here. I'm not going to say that Biz is like the most plugged in guy in the sport and has never gotten it wrong. But I do think there might be some truth to this. It says Biz's tweet about the Flyers being willing to back up the Brinks truck for Kaprizov and then more bonuses on top of it was a real kick in the balls. Again, I think they were very interested in Kaprizov. And maybe part of why they were going to be interested in Kaprizov is because they knew they were going to have one or two of their young wings that could get them defensive help, and then they could replace one of those guys with an even better version of a winger, and Kaprizov would have fit the bill. They also have guys that they believe in, right? Regardless of what you think of Sean Couturier is going to be here. He will be here. He will be the captain on this team. In an ideal world, Couturier is your 3C or your 4C because Zegras is your 1C, and he's done a great job. Because Jetlachenko solidifies himself as like the 2C or 3C. Because Jack Nesbitt continues to develop this year, and he solidifies himself as like the 2C, or maybe eventually the 1C. Who knows? Who's to say? They know they have Porter Martone in the wings. See what I did there? To play on the wing. They have young reinforcements coming. They believe in those guys, and not that they're just going to be NHL contributors. They believe that those guys are going to be difference makers for this team. They might be crazy, but they might not be. At some point, they're going to trade some of that wing depth to go out and get a young defenseman. They have to. or to try to get a stopgap defenseman, akin to like what a Matt Niskanen was, akin to what a Ryan Ellis was supposed to be. They need help on the blue line in the worst possible way. Now, the question that I've been posing, and the question that I kind of posed in the episode and in the description, is: has the Flyers rebuild plan actually changed? And I think it has. And I think that to some extent, it's actually better for the Flyers that Kaprizov and McDavid are now off the board, because it's now forced the Flyers to come to grips with the fact that there are no major free agents coming up in 2026 that are going to fundamentally change the ceiling of this team. You could scream until you're blue in the face, Jack Eichel would be a great signing, and he would be. There's virtually no chance Jack Eichel is going to come to Philadelphia. Now, if they somehow have a backdoor line of communication to Eichel and he comes here, sure, it would help the Flyers in a tremendous way. I don't see it being a realistic possibility. So now the Flyers have to kind of reconcile that if they thought the 2026 free agent class was going to be where they were going to get that big impact player, now it's off the board. So now the onus falls onto Danny Briere, to Keith Jones to some extent, to Rick Tockett's ability to bring players in, to connect with players. It's on those guys to figure out how to go out and acquire players who are going to be those difference makers, because free agency doesn't look like it's an option. This also leads to the people who want to see the Flyers suck again for another year for the shot at a generational talent in Gavin McKenna. This adds fuel to that fire. And now with the news that Cam York is hurt, is going to be on injured reserve to start the season, with the fact that the Flyers have two backup goalies as their actual goalies going into the year, in Sam Ersson and Dan Vladar, there, I'm sure, are people who are going to question whether or not the Flyers are in unintentional tank mode, akin to Chuck Fletcher's entire existence in Philadelphia. And I don't think it's that, but man, it is brutal. The good news for Flyers fans is there is no giant hope coming in 2026. There's no putting all your eggs in that basket only to be devastated when the team doesn't ultimately get the player. That part of this potential rebuild is over. Now everything falls on Danny Briere. You have to explore the trade market, use as many assets as you can, take as many of these young talents. What the hell was that? That was an airplane. I don't know if you guys saw that flying overhead. I was wondering if it was a UAP. It's not. It was just an airplane. Anyway, Briere is going to have to figure out, with the assets they have available, with the young talent they have, is there a way to go out and make an impact move? A Byram would actually be interesting. I would love the idea. Go out and get another one of these guys that you've long rumored to be interested in and see if there's a way to make it work. I mean, hell, we heard that the Flyers were interested in Trevor Zegras for 3 years. They finally did it. Again, Anthony DeMarco's story that came out on Tuesday. He said, here we go. Could the Flyers target Byram in a deal centered around forward Owen Tippett and defenseman Emil Andre, who, by the way, good defenseman, but he happens to be small. The Flyers think they're too small on the blue line, so they're not going to have Emil Andre start the season with the team. He might be traded. So, okay, could they target Byram in a deal centered around Owen Tippett and Emil Andre? DeMarco says Tippett does have size and is under contract for 6 seasons beyond this one, both of which would presumably check Buffalo's boxes for an arriving forward. Andre, as DeMarco reported last Friday, could be on the outs in Philadelphia long-term and is capable of playing both sides on the back end. He would have more than one countryman on the Sabres blue line as well. If that is a trade that you could theoretically make, it is one that absolutely makes sense for the Flyers. I hope they do it. You need to get better defensemen in here. The goalie situation is about as bad as it can be, but you can still fortify that blue line and feel a little bit better. All right, I'm going to go out to the comments here real quick. Casual Warzone guy says, if you make a splash this offseason, you need to make a trade. The good news is they can try to do that throughout the season now. They're not waiting on one of the big guys to, maybe go to prom with them in the offseason. It ain't happening. KW1323 says, no big free agent is going to come here. There's no reason. This team odds perpetually, I think this team is perpetually 5 years away from being 5 years away. Chris Freed with a good Shawshank Redemption reference here. Hope is a dangerous thing. Indeed it is. Connor Bus is just excited for hockey season to be back. Love going to games regardless of team status. That's fair too. It is nice to have hockey back. Carl Bradley over on X. Carl's good at this because Carl clicks on the video first to go into old Periscope mode and then leave the comment, and then we can bring it up on the show. Says I'd do that deal in a second. I would too. You want to give me Bo Byram for Owen Tippett and Emil Andre? Done in a heartbeat. If you have to include a mid-round pick, fine. If Buffalo says you need to trade a first-round pick, the answer is absolutely not. It would be interesting to see what they do, though. Let's see. Greg Bondarenko says, I think they have one more sour season before we can expect things to turn around. I do genuinely think that if the goalie situation were better, this team would be almost a guaranteed, like, low-tier, low-end playoff team. The goalie situation is so bad right now that, like, I'm not ready to backtrack on my thought that the Flyers are going to definitely make the playoffs as, like, the 8th seed. But the goalie situation is really bad. The blue line, especially with Cam York being out now, that situation's gotten even worse. We're going to find out pretty soon how bad things are going to be for the Flyers. Chris Reed asks, how are picking games being done on Snow the Goalie this season? We'll do the same thing that we've always done. I think Allison is going to be the one who's going to pull everything together again, and we'll do our season-long picks predictions. Finn says over on YouTube, hey, do you have any tips for me trying to start a sports radio show? Yes, don't. I'm kidding. But maybe. I don't have tips. I have no idea. Don't expect things to blow up in a big way right away. It is a long, long slog. And sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. Here's my tip. Don't get discouraged if things don't go the way that you want them to initially. And I wish you all the best. I hope it goes really well. All right. Those were like some really good reaffirming words. Finn, best of luck to you. I hope you do a great job. I hope your channel blows up in a big way, in a great way, and that you take off and you soar to new heights. You come back here and you say, hey, you told me not to get discouraged. I didn't get discouraged, and now I found success. And I'll be like, good job, Finn. Well done. High five. All right. I think it's time to go. It is 6:36 here in Las Vegas, which I guess means it's 9:36 in the general Philadelphia area. So I wish all of you a very nice night. Try to enjoy yourselves. Don't think about the Phillies. Don't really think about the Sixers. Get excited for what should be an Eagles beatdown of the Giants. I will say, if somehow the Giants win on Thursday, Philly might be the most miserable place on the planet to be, like at the end of the week. So you got that. Can the Phillies rebound? Can the Eagles win on Thursday night? Flyers play the Panthers. That'll be a loss, but at least hockey's back. We're going to try to find some positives around here. Bondarenko says, thanks for a great surprise Tuesday night show. You're welcome. Thanks for being here. I appreciate. Carl says, hey, if you see Jack Eichel out there, yeah, I'll be like, hey, listen here, Jack. Philadelphia next year. Ain't happening. All right. This will technically count as our Wednesday show. So it's a little bit early. Big thank you to everybody who joined me on YouTube, Facebook, and X. If you listen to the podcast in the podcast feed over on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon Music, Pandora, wherever you get your podcasts, do me a favor. Try to leave a 5-star rating on Spotify and on Apple Podcasts. If you're on Apple Podcasts, please leave a 5-star review. Be great. I'll read it on the show. If you're watching on YouTube, like the video, share the video, subscribe. And if you're on TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, and you see the short form content, give those videos a like. It helps people find the show. All right. Until, I guess, Friday. Maybe it'll be Thursday, but maybe Friday. But definitely the end of this week. Until then, this has been the Russ Joy Show. And I've been Russ Joy, but you knew that already because you're smart and it's also the name of the show. Have a great night, everybody. Put your head on that pillow. Dream little dreams. Good night. Bye now.